I gushed over my neighbor's detailed demon costume and asked how they made it. My neighbor grinned wickedly, revealing sharp teeth, and said, "I'm not wearing a costume." Submitted by Megan. Thanksgiving is meant to bring us together, a time to celebrate gratitude and gather around the table with those we love. But family is never simple. Old grudges, hidden resentments, and unspoken secrets can surface when we least expect them. And sometimes, the most unsettling things are found where we think we are safest. I'm Blair Bathory. Welcome to the Something Scary podcast. Thank you for joining us as we descend into the darkness together. So, want to hear something scary? Monster in the family. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't hiding in the dark. They're just waiting for the perfect moment to step into the light, like in this account by Noelle. We moved into the new house right before Thanksgiving break. My parents said it was perfect timing because for the first time in years, they were finally hosting Thanksgiving dinner instead of driving to someone else's place. They were both obsessed with the idea of proving they were a normal, stable, put-together family. We had never been that. My mom spent most of her time scrolling Pinterest for tablescape inspiration. My dad stressed about making his turkey brine taste like the Michelin chef video he bookmarked. They talked about this holiday like it was a performance that would fix everything broken between them. I stayed out of the way. I liked this house. I liked how quiet my room was at night. I liked how the hallways felt like you could hear a pin drop. I liked how sometimes, when the house was settled, it sounded like someone was whispering inside the walls, especially inside the closet. The first night here, I noticed something strange about it. The closet in my room was deeper than it should be, like the space went further back than the house blueprint allowed. The light inside the closet didn't work. There was no bulb even installed, just darkness, deep, static, and waiting. I left the door shut the first night, but I couldn't stop staring at it. I didn't feel scared. I felt noticed. Every night after that, I could hear soft scraping from inside, sometimes breathing, sometimes a low murmur that I couldn't fully distinguish as language. My parents never heard anything, or maybe they never listened long enough. I learned a long time ago not to tell adults things they would just dismiss as imagination. There's no point wasting your breath on people who already decided what's real before they even hear you talk. So I kept it to myself. Halloween came first, a test run. My babysitter, Emma, arrived. She was 17, always smelling like strawberry lip gloss, always texting boys she swore she hated. She didn't want to babysit that night. She kept complaining she was supposed to be at a costume party where her friends were all dressed as undead prom kings and queens. She kept sighing dramatically and flopping her hair over her shoulder. While she was downstairs watching horror movies and scrolling TikTok, I was upstairs listening to the closet. And it listened back. Sometime after 11, Emma came upstairs drunk off cheap beer she had smuggled in her tote bag. She leaned into the doorway. "Shouldn't you be asleep already?" "There's something in my closet," I said calmly. She rolled her eyes. "Okay, well, it can stay there. Good night, weirdo." I didn't say another word to her. Sometime later, I heard her wandering the hall again. I heard the closet door hinge squeak. I heard her gasp, a scuffle, a muffled scream. I didn't move. I just listened and waited. And when the house went quiet again, I went downstairs, took the half-empty beer can she had left next to the couch, and dropped it straight into the outdoor recycling bin. When I came back inside, nothing in the hallway looked disturbed at all. Emma never came back. My parents assumed she'd bail last minute and ditch the shift. My father grumbled about irresponsible teenagers, and my mother called her unprofessional, but neither of them filed a missing persons report or anything. They just shrugged, busy with their own lives again. I didn't feel bad for Emma. She never listened. She never cared. People who don't care about others don't get to be surprised when the world shows them the same indifference back. Days passed, Thanksgiving approached, The table was already set a full week early because my mother insisted she needed to feel the holiday energy to cope with her stress. My father sharpened his knives like he was auditioning for Top Chef. They kept practicing recipes every night, and every night the closet seemed to pulse with hunger. It didn't ask me for anything. I didn't speak to it out loud. We just understood each other. There was a quiet, mutual permission between us. I didn't need to fear it because I wasn't the one it wanted. It was only ever hungry for the people who pretended not to see what was real. Thanksgiving night finally came. My parents were frantic. My mother ran laps between the kitchen and dining room. My father was yelling about timing the dishes properly. I sat on the stairs and watched them bicker, arguing over whose cranberry sauce recipe was better. They didn't even look at me once. After the guests canceled last minute because one of my cousins threw up and everyone assumed it was the flu, my parents got so angry they decided Thanksgiving would just be us. To them, that meant shoving even more stuffing in the oven, even though it was no longer necessary. Around 6 p.m., when the sun dipped purple and gold behind the backyard maple tree, I quietly went upstairs. I opened my closet, slowly, with both hands. Inside, the darkness breathed in it like it had been starving, like this was what it had waited for all month. I went back downstairs and stood in the doorway of the kitchen. "Mom," I said, "come upstairs for a second." She didn't look up. "James, I'm basting now, not now." "Dad," I said, "come upstairs too." He yelled something about me being dramatic for attention again. So I just walked to the hallway and flicked the upstairs light off. The house instantly felt smaller, quieter. My mother sighed and stomped up the stairs, my father right behind her, both furious, blaming each other for my behavior. They followed me into my room. The closet door was open. I stepped aside. I didn't have to say anything. The dark surged outward, like claws and teeth in motion, devouring the space between them in a blink. I heard them scream. I heard the sounds of bodies hitting the hardwood floor and scraping back. I heard the rush of breath and crunch of something too fast to see clearly. PG-13 is vague. I promise you, it wasn't graphic. Just final. It was over in seconds. When it stopped, the closet door was almost completely closed again, just a sliver of black showing, like an eye watching. I went downstairs. I turned the oven off so the turkey wouldn't burn. I sat at the dining table and ate a slice of pumpkin pie by myself. It was the best Thanksgiving I ever had. I thought that would be the end, but it wasn't. When the police showed up 2 days later, after my neighbors reported they hadn't seen my parents, they asked me questions. They asked where my babysitter went. They asked why I didn't call anyone. I told them I didn't know. I said maybe my parents ran off together. Maybe Emma left because she got in trouble. I shrugged. They looked at each other like they didn't want the paperwork. Nobody ever looked in the closet. A week later, Child Protective Services placed me temporarily in a foster program. They said they'd find me a new home. A family that's stable, a family that's loving. I told them that sounded great. I've been packing tonight. My bag is ready by the door. I'm leaving this house behind. I'm excited, honestly. I like new homes, new rooms, new closets. Adults always want so desperately to believe their lives are normal. It makes them the easiest targets. There's a family waiting for me in the next town over. They're making dinner for me already. They're excited I'm arriving before Christmas. They said they'll put me in the spare room at the end of the hall, the one with the built-in closet. I'm not bringing anything with me from this house, but I don't need to. The monster never lived here. It lives in me, and I always get hungry again. Sometimes the evil we fear isn't separate from us all. It grows with us, learns from us, and learns how to blend in. It makes you wonder how many people you've met who smile, joke, and act normal, but are quietly feeding on the world around them. So how can you ever be sure the monster isn't the person already sitting at your table? Have you tried everything under the sun for peace of mind? It sounds like it's time for you to try Cornbread Hemp CBD gummies, formulated to help relieve discomfort, stress, and sleeplessness. All products are third-party, lab-tested, and USDA organic to ensure safety and purity. And let me tell y'all, I've been testing these for about 4 weeks now. The company sent me a whole bunch of options, and I've really been enjoying the Sleep CBD gummies, and they genuinely work. I've been all over the country this year, and I've been missing my bed, and it's really messed up my sleep, but these actually help. And right now, Something Scary listeners can save 30% on their first order. Just head to cornbreadhemp.com/scary and use code SCARY at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/scary and use code SCARY. Sometimes the ties that bind us to family are more dangerous than we could ever imagine. Just like this horrifying story shared by Reba. Anton and Katya hadn't seen each other much since their parents died earlier that year. Thanksgiving felt empty without them, so when the invitation to spend the weekend at the Whitaker house arrived, they accepted almost out of habit. The house had been in the family for generations, and rumor had it that old heirlooms were tucked away somewhere inside. Maybe Anton thought they could salvage some last connection to the past. The house sat on the outskirts of the mining town like a secret no one wanted to keep. Its paint was cracked and peeling, shingles missing in jagged patches. From the street, it looked like a painting left out in the rain too long, all colors running and edges blurred. Anton parked the car and noticed a loose shutter banging in the wind. "Guess the ghosts haven't redecorated yet," he muttered, more to break the silence than for humor. Katya didn't answer. She ran her fingers along the wrought iron railing by the steps, tracing the curls and knots as if she could read the stories in them. Inside, the air was thick with dust, old wood, and something faintly metallic. Anton spent the morning opening drawers and cupboards, finding brittle letters, fading photographs, and a porcelain doll missing an eye. Katya moved more slowly, her steps echoing like a metronome in empty halls. Something about the house made her pause in front of the tapestry of stiff Victorian portraits. The eyes of the painted Whitakers seemed to follow her, watching, waiting. She shivered and looked away, but couldn't shake the feeling that some of the faces might change if she stared too long. By dusk, the quiet felt unsettling. Shadows pulled beneath doors, corners seemed too deep, and the floorboards creaked in a rhythm that didn't match their steps. Upstairs, Anton noticed the doors led to strange places, one a closet, another a bricked-up wall. And tucked behind the faded tapestry was a narrow staircase, spiraling down into darkness. The chill that rolled up the steps made them both pull their jackets tighter, though the air inside the house had felt warm just minutes before. Their torches flickered despite fresh batteries, throwing dancing shadows across the walls. At the bottom, they entered a room with no windows, illuminated only by the dim glow of their lights reflecting off a warped mirror. The floorboards were carved with hundreds of names, some trailing beneath a threadbare rug and crawling up the walls. Katya's breath fogged in the freezing air, and she reached toward the mirror. Her hand trembled, and Anton grabbed her wrist, noticing for the first time that their reflections lagged behind their movements, eyes hollow and unrecognizable. A low, guttural whisper filled the room, a chant in a language neither sibling recognized. The rug shifted underfoot, revealing a trap door. Against their better judgment, they opened it, revealing a staircase spiraling even further down, slick with moisture and the scent of raw earth. The chanting intensified, surrounding them from every shadow, vibrating in the floorboards and walls. At the bottom, the cellar revealed itself, cramped and claustrophobic. It was lined with shelves of dusty jars. Anton's stomach turned as he saw mummified fingers and cloudy eyes floating in yellowed liquid. Shadows moved independently of their source, shifting along the shelves, and the names above seemed to whisper, echoing the corners of the room. Panic gnawed at the edges of their minds. Suddenly, the trapdoor slammed shut above them, sealing them in darkness. Cold air rushed around their necks as unseen hands seemed to scrape against their shoulders. Katya screamed, a sound swallowed instantly by the echoing stone walls as something grabbed her ankles and tugged her toward the deepest shadows. Anton lunged, his fingers brushing hers, but the cellar stretched impossibly long, the exit shrinking into a pinprick of distant light. Then, as their hearts thudded in unison, a new horror revealed itself. Among the carved names, Anton noticed something horrifying. The initials EW and LW. Their own. His stomach dropped as he scanned further, recognizing other familiar letters. MW, HW. Ancestors he had only seen in family photos, now etched into the wood like a warning from the past. The whispers surged louder, and the mirror upstairs seemed to shimmer with a dark, fluid light. 2 new shadows swirled within its glass, eerily human in shape, their forms twisted, yet their faces cold. Hollow reflections of themselves were unmistakable. The Whitaker's curse hadn't been random. It had waited, patiently spanning generations, consuming those curious enough to claim the family's legacy. Anton screamed as he was pulled into the darkness alongside Katya. The cellar walls seemed to pulse with hundreds of names, all members of the Whitaker line, trapped and preserved for eternity. He realized in a bone-deep dread that the heirlooms they had sought were never objects. They were themselves. The house didn't just hold family history. It consumed it, one generation at a time. The mirror upstairs shimmered once more, reflecting the empty room behind it, but within the glass, 2 new shadows lingered. Anton and Katya's hollow eyes watched from the depths, waiting. Somewhere in the distance, faint whispers promised that the next curious visitor would set them free again, and the cycle would continue. Outside, the last golden light of Thanksgiving afternoon fell across the overgrown lawn, as if the house had never awakened. The town would continue its quiet routines, never suspecting that a family's grief had led to their ultimate undoing. And the Whitaker house waited patiently, hungry for the next weekend, the next siblings, the next legacy to claim. Most of us know all too well, family can be complicated, messy, and sometimes unlovable. We spend our lives chasing connections, traditions, and memories. But what if some parts of our family are meant to stay buried? How far would you go to uncover the secrets of those you love most? Billie Eilish texted me. Just kidding. It was a scam. But I've fallen for these before, and unfortunately, the holidays aren't always about finding the perfect gift. Not every deal is actually what it seems. Trust me, scammers are getting more creative to trick people into sharing their payment info through methods like fake shopping sites and giveaways that are too good to be true. Luckily, Cash App's 24/7 fraud monitoring helps detect and alert you for unusual card activity should someone gain access to your card, so you can act fast if something seems off. You can also lock or unlock your Cash App card instantly right in the app for extra control and peace of mind. Stay one step ahead of scams this season and keep your money secure with Cash App. For a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code SECURE10 in your profile, send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money, that's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. It's time for something from our listeners, and this week I wanted to share an email. Hi, my name is Trevor. I'm 15, and I wanted to share the scariest thing that ever happened to me, and it happened over Thanksgiving. I went to visit my grandparents over the holiday break. One of my cousins told me an old man had died in their house before they bought it. I thought she was just trying to freak me out until one night around 12 or 1 a.m., me and my cousin Chelsea were joking around, doing TikTok dances, when we heard this deep groan, like an old man in pain, coming from the hallway. I instantly felt sick to my stomach, like something was watching. 2 years ago, my grandma and I had bought a Ouija board as a joke because I love paranormal stuff. Nothing weird ever happened before, but that night, after the groan, we decided to pull it back out. We asked if anyone was there, and something actually answered. The planchette moved, we contacted something, and right after we heard the same groan again, louder this time. We said goodbye fast and shoved the board back in the box. I never opened it again. It's still in my closet. I refuse to touch it. We never heard the groaning again after that, but I always wonder, if we play again, would the old man come back? Hey, that was really scary, and if you have a scary story, you can send us an email about your encounter or untold true crime stories at SomethingScary@snarled.com. Distance doesn't always silence what waits at home, like this Thanksgiving horror written by Sarah Lukasiewicz. Claire had spent her life avoiding the chaos her family called tradition. Born into wealth, she had the means to escape the yearly nightmare. Thanksgiving at the sprawling Whitmore estate, where greed, drunken arguments, and subtle cruelties played out like clockwork. Every year, she told herself she was better than them, cleaner, smarter, morally untamed. That belief, she thought, would keep her safe. This year, she had a plan. A small remote ski lodge in the mountains. Snow blanketed the roads in early November, insulating her from cell service, social obligations, and the legacy of her family's curse, or what she called superstition. She told herself it was superstition, the kind her mother used to justify her sharp remarks, the kind her father used to excuse his explosive temper. Claire stepped out of her car at the lodge, suitcase in hand. The lodge looked as though someone had curated it just for postcards. Stone chimneys, warm light spilling from frosted windows, and smoke curling lazily into the early dusk. Other guests emerged, greeting each other with smiles that reminded her why she loved solitude. She checked in, signed the electronic guest book, and settled into her room. The suite was luxurious, wood-paneled, with a wide bay window overlooking snow-dusted pines. A fire crackled in the corner, and she sank into the armchair, pulling off her boots. For a moment, she let herself believe she had escaped. But something prickled at the edges of her awareness. Faint footsteps pressed into the snow outside her window. They led up to the balcony, then stopped abruptly. She frowned, rationalized. They were probably lodge staff. That night, the lodge was quiet, almost too quiet. Snow pressed against the windows in thick sheets, muting the usual creaks of settling timber. Claire tried to read, tried to drink in the luxury she had purchased with her independence, and yet the silence carried a weight, as though the buildings were listening. It began subtly, a cough from an empty hallway, the faint smell of roasted turkey wafting from the kitchen, even though no one had cooked. And the mirror? Oh, the mirror. At first, it reflected her exactly, but then, in moments, she wasn't paying attention. She swore she saw someone else in the reflection, a shadow of a woman with her mother's sharp cheekbones, her father's narrowed eyes, and her own mouth twisted in frustration. She blinked. It was gone. She shook her head, told herself, it's the snow, the isolation, cabin fever. She went to bed, the fire reduced to embers, and pulled the blanket over her. The next morning, the storm worsened. Ski lifts were closed, roads were impassable. The luxury of distance felt like a trap. Claire tried to distract herself, skiing around the resort, walking the trails, talking to the receptionist, but everything felt off. Paths she had walked yesterday seemed rearranged, the trees casting unfamiliar shadows, the snow forming odd impressions as though it remembered someone else's passage. When she returned to the lodge that evening, she noticed her room door slightly ajar. She never left it unlocked. Inside, a small silver ornament sat on her nightstand, a tiny pilgrim figurine she remembered from the Whitmore estate, her mother's favorite for every Thanksgiving. She hadn't brought it. It had no reason to be there. Claire tried to laugh it off, pouring herself a glass of wine, sitting by the fire, but the lodge felt different. Halls stretched further than they should, corners deep in shadows that shouldn't exist, and somewhere down the hall, she thought she heard someone whispering her name. By the third night, the storm raged. Snow pressed in against the windows, winds carrying sounds that weren't just wind. Claire barely slept, haunted by the half-seen figures in the hallways, the smell of roasting meat where there was none, the faint echo of laughter she recognized, hers and her family's, all tangled together. She decided to leave. She needed to pack the car, drive down the mountain, and escape the unnatural quiet. She bundled up, opened the door, and stepped into the snow. Footsteps crunched under her boots, but then she froze. There were other tracks, faint, following hers. She stopped, and they stopped. She walked faster, and then mirrored her pace exactly. Claire broke into a run. The snowstorm whipped around her, the lodge disappearing behind sheets of white. But no matter how far she ran, the footsteps persisted. She couldn't lose them, and then, in the white blur, she saw a figure, just beyond the tree line, standing perfectly still. A shadow that bore her own shape, yet carried the weight of the Whitmore family. Every sharp judgment, every lie told, every subtle cruelty ever uttered. Her lungs burned. Snow stung her face, but she kept running. The lodge, the footprints, the figure, they all pursued her. She stumbled, fell into the snow, and when she looked up, she saw it again. The silhouette, clearer this time, framed by the dim light of dawn behind the mountains. It raised a hand as if beckoning or warning. Claire scrambled to her feet and ran until the forest thinned and she reached the lodge's main road. She looked back, footprints, dozens of them tracing a path from the lodge, from the trees, from some impossible origin, all leading straight to her. And then, just like that, the snowstorm ended, calm, beautiful, serene. The lodge stood quiet, welcoming, perfectly still. Claire shook, chest heavy, and finally noticed the footprints leading from the forest to her were identical to her own. She stumbled back into the lodge, thinking she had survived, that maybe it was a hallucination, a panic, the result of isolation and fear. But the mirror in the hallway caught her eye, and there, behind the reflection of the room she knew she had entered, a shadow of herself stood in the doorway. Or was it her mother, her father, some composite of the family she had tried to outrun? She couldn't tell. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows, and when she blinked, the figure was gone. Claire sank to the floor, realizing that the luxury of wealth and distance could not protect her. The curse, whatever it was, had followed. It had never left, and as the wind outside whispered through the trees, carrying faint, familiar laughter, she understood. No matter how far you run, your family always finds you. Some curses aren't written in ink. They're carried in the patterns of our own families, and the habits and cruelty we inherit without ever realizing it. Claire thought she could escape by leaving, but the past has a way of catching up, no matter the miles or the snow. Can we ever truly outrun the parts of ourselves that come from the ones who raised us? Or do they always find a way to follow? Has anyone else had a terrifying encounter with something supernatural? Tell us your story at SomethingScary@Snarled.com. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube @Snarled so you never miss an episode creeping your way. And trust me, you'll want to never miss a thing, particularly as we gear up for the winter spooky season. All right, y'all, happy Thanksgiving, and until next time, sweet screams. This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, produced, edited, and mixed by Fitz Harris, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman. If you have a story you'd like to submit, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Don't forget to watch the video version of Something Scary over at youtube.com/snarled. And if you'd like to support the show and everything we do at Snarled, join our Patreon at patreon.com/snarled.